Alright, hello guys. Seems like I'm getting a bit late. It's 20:04 on the 2nd of July 2017. And my internet connection decided to die as I was starting the previous video. So, yeah, Brexit yellow room. I mean, as I've done my first video on Brexit. It was the first one that I think I've ever did, which was big enough, talking about any serious subjects, looking at the reasons for Brexit, why that happened, who to blame. I blame the left, not the right. The right just voted the way, well, I can't even say the right was voting, it's just people voted for Brexit, but many of them represent both right and left, but it's the self-identified left that's been generally blamed for the Brexit. From my point of view, so the year has passed after Brexit, and there's been quite a few people talking, what happened, what have we learned, is it just as cool as people thought it would be? Is it as bad as people thought it would be? What is it to expect, and things like this. So I thought, let's go through this. So let's have some good things which happened after Brexit. What do I start with? The good things for after Brexit. Oh yes, Jonathan Pye. He kind of started a little bit before Brexit. We have to give him that. But he became, over the last year, he became slightly more known. A few more videos from him. Quite an entertaining guy. Probably would have not been as well known if it wasn't for his criticism of Brexit and Trump. So obviously the Trump happened after Brexit. Yeah, lucky guy. What else has happened? So what are the good things that happened after Brexit? I think we can probably finish at that. Good things after Brexit. If anything comes up overall, if I think they're overall good, I'll mention it. But if I have to look at the collective influence of those things, then, quite often the things that seem to be good are not as good as they seem. So, obviously, after Brexit, I've myself have concentrated on trying to move out of UK. Again, not something that you do for the love of it. I lived in here for quite a few years, but having walked in Europe and having seen it, the kind of style of life and the way they was changing in Europe in the last few years compared to the things that were happening to UK, and with my personal biggest paychecks coming from Europe in the last few years, I just kind of had to say, look, I'm a one. So whether it's good or bad, I don't know. We'll see how it happens. I've obviously been traveling to Europe, especially last few months, for a few times for the job interviews and the like. But what's been happening after Brexit, after all? Is it been such a great thing that's been discussed to us? Is it as bad as been discussed to us? So obviously the first thing that happened after Brexit was the pound fell down. It fell through the floor. And everybody went, wow, such a great thing, we'll be able to export a lot more things. As if the people who were buying Jaguar would have cared if it has gotten about a few £100 cheaper. No, they didn't. So obviously some people who produce them from local goods, kind of niche markets, for example, some people who are making instruments were saying, oh yes, it's a great thing because now I can sell more of my stuff. Unfortunately, because the pound fell through and the prices started going up on food and other things, so their balance didn't really change that much. But obviously having the access and being able to sell more of your products, still I think, feels probably for them, feels better because they feel more appreciated. Somebody who makes things with their own hands will always, feel more appreciated if the product of their work is appreciated than if they just paid for it. And obviously if you can sell more of the things you make, it means that people like them, people want them, and as somebody who makes it, you want it to be there. what happened with the left? Have they learned the lesson? The do-gooders, you know, the bunch of them. Last week I've done a very controversial kind of hour about talking about, obviously, you know, the political correctness, you know, the racism, and, you know, the religions and stuff like this. Obviously, like I said back then, it was not an easy subject. And here's my result from it. There's people who are self-identified, you know, as we're the left, we want to fight for justice, blah 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 blah, you know. Have at least a single one of them had what it takes to say, look, we didn't like what you said here, we would like to argue with you on this one, you know. Post a comment, say, look, you know, you're wrong here, or no. Nope. They didn't learn the lesson. They just went, no, we're going to delete you, we don't want to talk to you. That's the best they can do. They don't want to talk about it. Right? They don't want to talk about the subjects. You know, the same subjects that their refusal of discussing that led to Brexit, they don't want to discuss them even now. They, like, you know, some have to, some do, but overall the subjects kind of, they want to forget about them. They don't want to hear about it. They just don't. No, not for them. Obviously, so they're not going to be winning any Brexit arguments. But has the argument been won? So there's few that kind of having to start using facts rather than emotions. Still using lots of emotions though, you know, like listening to some radio shows, and, you know, they would say, oh yeah, but we had this, like, for example, some new facts coming up about Brexit, like, yeah, the UK, as one of the founding members of EU, had the right to basically block pretty much any law that came down from EU. They could just say, well, we don't like it, so nope, this is not going through. Veto, that's the one. They had the right of veto. UK has the right of veto. But then you kind of have to ask the question, well, wait a minute. If the people wanted to get people to vote to stay in EU, probably telling everybody, look, we have the right of veto to any European law ever possible. We had the right to say, no, we're not going to let this law through because it's actually bad. Like, you know, because obviously the governments have been blaming a lot on the EU. They've been saying, like, EU told us to do that. And so why didn't they tell everybody, look, we do actually have the right of veto? Well, I think because if they did, the people would have asked them, but then why did you not do that? Why didn't you veto these laws? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you use the right of veto to bring things to order or stop something crazy which you've been blaming for our way of life getting worse? And they would not be able to answer on any side. Fact of life. So, okay, we had obviously Scottish Parliament, Scottish guys losing the election. At least I'm not sure whether it was for the Scottish Parliament or whether it was for the British Parliament, but they definitely lost the one to the British Parliament. We'll see what happens in the Scottish Assembly later. They were talking about another referendum on independence. Be it as it is. So what been happening? So it's like, again, you know, it's like a bit of a crazy stuff. I don't know whether it's good or bad, but it was quite obviously bad because obviously for me, you know, because I did vote to stay in Europe for very much different reasons than many people, other people who stayed in Europe. And I wanted the UK to stay in, but to be the leader in the change of Europe. Whereas the many people that were saying that we want to stay, they were saying, look, let's just leave the way as it is. You know, we don't care about the stuff we don't want to talk about. We just don't want to hear about that. Don't talk about it. Just you're just racist. Don't talk about it. You know, we're just gonna we're just gonna continue the way we were. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, it was brilliant strategy, but didn't work. So many people now going like, okay, let's get on with the Brexit, or like let's at least get on with the negotiations, and then see what the result of negotiations brings, and then maybe have another referendum, or let's see, let's just get on with it. Let's just do something. Because this in confidence brings a lot of shit. Alright, so obviously we already talked about the pound falling. So obviously the prices started going up. The Europeans, the ones that were coming here, so obviously maybe a good thing, maybe not so such a good thing, but many Europeans started to go back home. Because what was happening beforehand is many companies, they wanted to charge the what I call Swiss prices for their services, for the jobs they were doing, but they wanted to pay Polish wages. Didn't quite work out, because obviously with time what many people who came over here from cheaper countries, what they were finding out is if they had the skill back home, they started getting paid, over time, compared to obviously, they were not getting paid as much as here, but compared to the cost of living in UK, they were finding out that, look, you know what, I can as well go home. I've got the skill. I've developed the skill here. Great, I was working here for 3-4 years. I've got the local skills. Now I can go back to Poland, and now I can provide them the service that I've learned here. I can do it back home. And obviously you're not going to be paid as much as here, but his rent is going to be like 10 times cheaper. His food bill is going to be pretty much similar, but if he's got a few relatives in the countryside, he's in for a treat. Because if you go to the Polish countryside and you buy directly from the farmers, not something we do a lot in England, but obviously if you go to the countryside and you buy directly from the farms, you can obviously buy a lot of side cheaper. Talking about the farms, let's say, I do apologize, I do go confusing about things. The British farmers have found out this summer that nobody wants to come here anymore. Okay? Again, it's the lack of confidence in what's going to happen in England with all this Brexit stuff. But it's also people have started doing the math. And they were going like, when the pound was more expensive, they were coming to the farms and they were, after you spend a month working on the farm, you'll be lucky to get like yourself 500 quid. So 3 months on the farms, well, the season on the farms goes slightly longer. So they would come here, they would spend 4 or 5 months on the farms, come back home with £2,500, because the pounds was a bit more expensive, and they would go like, look, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna eat shit food, but obviously for a while, then I come back home and I'm gonna have £2,500, which is gonna be more than I would have kept if I stayed back home. With more and more production moving to the cheaper countries, including the farming. I mean, for example, I'm originally come from Ukraine, as some people might know, and there is not a single empty field in most of the Ukraine except Crimea and the eastern part, which has been invaded by Russia. So it's like you get a ridiculous situation where you have a fighting going on, you have a war, and then like 10 miles in, you have a farmers walking on the fields producing food, which they'll be supplying to Europe, to Africa, wherever. Right? Same thing happens in Poland, same things happens in other countries down the Eastern Europe. Why? Because the labor is cheaper. But all of a sudden the labor there finds that, look, the farms are opening up. If beforehand they were like, slightly messed up economies, not so much farming, now the big farming companies come in there and they start doing a bit of farming. And they go like, well, do I go to the farm in England well, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 months. I've got no idea what's going to happen. Or do I stay here and I will get, by the end of the month, I will get slightly less, but I'll be at home, I'll be with my family, you know. Same stuff as, like, say, the wages in the farming industry, you know, started to balance them out, you know. So it doesn't help that the British farmers, obviously, last, well, a few dozen years now, had to put half of their crops back into the ground. So we already know that, obviously, the strawberries, the apples, the pears or plums and something else, if the supermarket doesn't like them, well, most of it goes back into the ground. So obviously, I think what Brexit tells us is that we're gonna have to find some new skills and some new ways of dealing with this. And probably one of the better ways of dealing with food wastage like this is so that the strawberries and the plums and the pears are made into jams and stuff like this, which have more strawberries, plums and pears rather than some chemical shit which makes the jam look like, I don't know what, like a jelly, you know. Like a jelly with a little bit of strawberry in there just to make it look nice. I wouldn't mind jam which has got just strawberry in it. So for the view of supermarkets, yeah, buy more strawberries from farmers, put them into jams. We don't mind paying slightly more for a good jam. Most of the other jams kind of not too good. So maybe farmers will have to start new ways, looking into new ways of not wasting that much produce and turning them into income, so they can start actually paying people better wages to come and work at the farms. We have also a crisis in NHS and care industry because, again, beforehand people used to come to UK to make the money. Now, because the pound has gotten so much cheaper, obviously less people are confident in the future what's going to happen in England and whether they're going to be kicked out in a year or so. You know, with the cost of living still high, sky high, obviously, you know, many people, they do the calculations, and the problem is that what they find out is that the industry starts to pop up over there as well. And it's not just about care work in their countries, it's also the care work in other developed countries, because what many people are finding out is that, you know, if you speak English, you can quite happily look after people in Germany. With a bit of practice in German, you can go there in Germany. Learn a bit of French with some bad English and you can move to France. And I think many people that were looking beforehand like an easy way, look, you know, we can just go to England, we know English already, they start looking around. At least I said, this is my suspicion. I'm not saying it's 100% correct. I'm not perfect, you know. But I think a lot of this starts happening. So the care industry, so people are starting looking elsewhere and they're finding that they can actually find it. Go to Finland, go to Sweden, go to Switzerland, go to Denmark, go to Germany. People there, many people there speak better English. And I'm not speaking like young people. I'm not talking young people. I'm talking like the older generation. They speak better English than many people in England do. And I actually talk about English people who live in England. And you, especially if you talk to somebody from banking sector in London, you know, you try talking to them and he's like, you mate, we speak completely different languages. You sound English, but I don't understand the stuff you're saying because it just doesn't make any fucking sense. You know, but hey, you know, who am I to judge? You know, they have their bank talk, we have our English. They can stick to their bank talk. But again, moving on to the banks. As has been warned, as has been forewarned, this is as a result of Brexit, as people were warning that many places, many banks, many financial institutions are going to choose European market over the British market. And in the last couple of weeks, I was reading about a Japanese bank. Don't remember the name of the top of my head, but it's an investment bank as well, which was employing 3,000 people in London, and they've just announced that they're moving. They were deliberating between different places, and like I said, they went to Germany and they found out that many people in Germany speak perfectly good English. They don't have to learn German to be in Germany, and they decided to move their office to Frankfurt am Main, as far as I remember. So yeah, 3,000 jobs moving out of England, out of London. Obviously quite high paid jobs. What does it give us? So people say, so what, fuck them, they can bugger off. The problem is that they're not the only ones. There's quite a few. There's like more jobs appearing as I was looking around Europe, and more jobs moving to Portugal. So there's like, I had a few talks with some companies in Portugal as well. More jobs are moving kind of German way. Some companies are moving to Amsterdam. Hookers and bankers, what could go wrong? Top it up with legal drugs. I mean, you can't go wrong. It's a perfect combination. Amsterdam is a place like, bankers, drugs and hookers. Fucking hell. I didn't even think about it until now. That's gonna be one hell of a city to go to. But like I said, a lot of this they're moving out. So let's say they move this bank moving out 3,000 people. Now, I'm just kind of going off the top of my head, but I'd be safe to say that the taxes that they were paying in UK out of their wages, we're not talking about the bank paying its taxes, I would say the minimum average of the taxes all of those 3,000 people were paying was around 25 grand a year. 25 grand multiplied by 3,000 people that are moving out. They're not here. They're not going to be paying taxes here anymore. They're moving out. 25 grand by 3,000, that's 75 million pounds a year in taxes gone. So these are either people who they're losing their jobs, or they're moving out. They're going to Germany. They'll be paying their taxes in Germany. And same thing happens with HSBC, which is moving thousands of jobs. So they're like basic customer care and a lot of basic stuff. They're moving like from the south up to north. But at least 30 to 40% of the jobs that used to be in UK are now being moved to France, Germany, and somewhere in Asia. I'm not gonna Cambodia or something like this. I don't know. I'm not gonna say which particular one. But from what I've heard from people who actually work at HSBC is that they do move these jobs. Like a lot of jobs gonna go to Europe. A lot of jobs are gonna go to the Asian offices where they have to pay people a lot less than they do in England. That's fucking fun. Beforehand, they had like some obviously deals and stuff like this with government they had to honor if they wanted to keep their offices in UK. But because now they don't give a shit, they kind of say, well, you guys Brexiting, you live in Europe, and obviously Europe is our big market. We like British market, but it's a small market. European market is a big market. Because we're moving all our stuff to Europe, we're actually owning our agreements with Europe by keeping these jobs, by moving more jobs into Europe. But we can also like see if we can save a few bobs by moving the jobs to somewhere in Asia where we don't have to pay to people for some development jobs and stuff like this as much as we would have to do in Europe. Say, these people will probably have a better style of life in there, in Asia, because they still get paid fair bit because of, like it's IT jobs and development jobs, so they still paid fair bit. They're still probably going to have a better lifestyle there, but they're not going to be paid British wages. They're not going to be paying to British developers unless British developers say, you know what, I really feel like moving to South Asia. You know, I'm single, I've got no else to lose, you know, I've got no kids. You know, I've got, you know, some money probably saved up, you know, I've been smart about it. Now, instead of staying in England and, you know, facing the crisis that is coming, I like the idea of moving to South Asia, so they will probably move. Other than that, I don't know. I know, but I say, some people might not be able to move because they obviously have their families, their children, their wives, you know, everybody's got jobs, they got homes, you know, they have parents to look after. Obviously, the guy that decides to move to South Asia will probably going to tell his parents, look, you know, why don't you move with me if he's the only child, if he's a good child, unlike me. But if he's a good child, he's probably going to say, look, you know, come over, move with me, you know, and he's going to pay a nurse in South Asia to look after his parents. He's not going to be paying a nurse in England. He ain't going to be getting any money from that. So overall, I say we can see how like moving thousands of jobs out of UK means that our economy is shrinking and the taxes that are going to the government are shrinking. You remember that 350 million a week they were talking about? I wonder how much they'd be losing by the end of this year, just from the companies moving out of UK. I mean, some people might say it's good. Some people might say good riddances to them. Obviously, no, not many of us like bankers. But we do have to admit that having banks in UK, paying those wages to their staff, it would be cool if those banks have spread out a bit out of London and pay those wages somewhere else, rather than driving up the cost of living in London and around it. You know, if they done it sooner, but nevertheless, they start moving out. So, again, probably a good news for people in Newcastle and Birmingham and Manchester. Now, look, guys, you know, you might be getting some bigger offices from bigger banks moving from London to you, because they're not going to be as critical to stay in London for them. So they're going to be moving a lot of technical jobs from the more expensive south to slightly cheaper north. But again, it's not going to be still saving. A lot of jobs are going to be going to Europe, so not a good thing. Some production, obviously, we talked about, obviously, falling of production. I've started from that, saying, no, look, you know, some people can sell it cheaper, but again, talking about production, some of the production, actually quite a bit of it, is moving to Europe. And I'm not talking about, like, you know, production that is owned by Indian companies. We don't know what's going to happen with that once Brexit hits. You know, that Jaguar that we were talking about earlier that was made in Britain is actually owned by Tata Motors, which is an Indian company. And once they have to deal with all the other expenses of Brexit, things that will drive them out, we don't know how they will react. Because just looking at smaller businesses, like I've mentioned before, a friend of mine that makes swords, you know, he didn't pay me to say that, but Denelli Armories is making, you know, some of the best swords in the world when it comes to historical fencing. So we're talking about European swords. We're not speaking about Chinese swords or, like, you know, Japanese swords. You know, probably the best Japanese swords to get. Probably best way to go is to go to Japan. But if you want to get good European swords, he's one of the best guys in the business, if not the best guy, you know. I just don't want to be too nice to him. And, you know, talking to the guy, he says, look, you know, talking to him on Facebook, you know, listening to what he says on Facebook, he's considering moving his business to Europe. What are the reasons? Obviously you don't know what's going to happen with ability to export to Europe, whereas quite a few of his customers are in Europe. B, he's with this in confidence, he doesn't know how much he can afford to invest into new stuff because obviously moving the production into a new place, for example, a bigger place, and getting new people, and then finding out in half a year that he can't sell his stuff in Europe because he cannot export without signing up a whole bunch of paperwork, which is going to drive him probably nuts, doesn't help his business plans. There is another backlash. Obviously the pound has fallen in price, and what many smaller businesses find is that they are sourcing their materials from elsewhere. Whether it's the metal for the swords, whether it's the metal for the cars, whether it's European parts for some electrical goods, because obviously we don't have a full spec production in UK anymore. So when they produce a car, for example, they buy tires from Michelin, which is European. They don't produce them in England. They buy lots of electrical parts from somewhere in Europe, somewhere in China. Obviously the pound falling down in price means that all of a sudden those parts have gotten so much more expensive. And if the pound falls in price, like 10%, 15, 20%, this means that the metal for the Jaguar is going to be like that so many percent more expensive. Okay? The energy we buy in, like the oil we buy in, all of a sudden, first they were spending 10 quid for a barrel of oil or whatever, let's say 30 quid for a barrel of oil, yeah. Now they have to pay nearly 40 quid for a barrel of oil. So all of a sudden, all that goes up in price. So we're probably going to see the petrol prices. I don't have a car at the moment, so I'm not going to go there. But I'm sure that quite a few drivers would probably start going like, fuck, my petrol has gone up in prices again by a tenner this week. I remember, because obviously the oil now is, some of the cheapest is like 50 bucks a barrel. And yet the petrol at the petrol station is over a quid. At least last time I looked, is around £1. Or I don't know. It's been a while, it's been a few months ago. It's probably changed since then. But still, the petrol's there, so they still have to pay all this. So the chickens come into roost. Whereas like beforehand, they were like, oh right, yeah, I can sell something cheaper. But no, you can't, because now you have to spend more money on buying goods and stuff like this. So energy, like materials, parts, things like this, they gone up in price. So the only thing you're about saving on is the cost of labor, and that is about to start going up. With the cost of living obviously going up, people were gonna start going like, oops, we've already been in trouble before, now we're getting even worse, so we have to have higher wages. If you listen to some radio stations and to the news, you will hear that the refusal of the government to lift the ban on lap of wage rises, so that public sector workers get proper wage rise instead of just 1% a year. It's starting to cause them already, because people already, again, live in the industry, right? The firemen live in the fire brigades, the nurses are living their nursing, because again, if you go somewhere in Scotland and you make 25 grand a year as a nurse, you're probably okay. It's slightly cheaper to live there if you do this in Nottingham or something like this. If you live down in the south of England and you make 25 grand a year as a nurse, let me just say that you're not doing very well. Okay? I've actually sat down, again, one of the reasons I've looking into moving out of UK, I've sit down and I did the math, right? At the moment, I'm obviously 35. I'm not sure if I want to get a family, but I have to kind of consider that. I have to consider that At some point of time in the next 100 years, I will settle down. I will get married, I will have a kid, So, what is it that I need to do that? And I did the math. Right, I looked at the cost of renting around Brighton, London. I didn't look in London, sorry guys. I looked around Brighton area. If I want to be a father to my kids, if I want to do them, to look after them, if I want to be in a situation where my wife or does not have to go to work, or if my wife decides that she wants to be a working mom and she wants me to look after the kids, who knows? I don't mind. I might be a very supportive husband and just say, look, okay, I'm going to look after the kids and get myself a few little jobs on my computer, so while the kids are sleeping. But even then, when the woman gives birth to a child for 6-7 months, it's very hard for her to go to work. So at least the family's income should be over £50,000. That's if you want to have one kid, right? Other than that, you have to start relying on the government paying you. £50,000. What does it include? Obviously, once you get 50 grand in UK, that's before tax. You lose around 20 grand on tax, so you got 30 grand. If you have a wife and a kid, you probably want a 2-bedroom flat. Anything reasonable, at least a place where you could bring your kid to, at least from my point of view, from things I've seen, starts at least £1,000. So, at least 1 grand, probably more. But we're gonna say, look, bare minimum, £1,000. It's not in the center of city. It's slightly out of, closer to the edge of Brighton. So, but you get 1,000. You go to get there. You go there, you get £1,000 flat, right? On top of that, you have to pay council tax, another tax. Yeah, we didn't know about that, but we're gonna, on a 2-bedroom flat like this, probably 250 quid, 200, 250. We'll say 200. I'm not sure. Not 100% sure. I'm living in a small flat, but obviously around 200 quid a month. So there you go. You got another 2.5 grand gone. Right. So by now we're already looking nearly 15 grand just for a place to keep your family. Okay. So then you have other bills like electricity, water rates, heating, internet, telephone, okay, we live in the world where people where, for example, people like me, I would probably keep my family away from the TV, so I'm not going to pay the TV license, they can bug off. I'd use internet and I teach my kids to use it, but still, with all those bills, you're looking at over 15 grand, 15, 16 grand, just for a flat. Okay, if you want to have a family. Now, people would say, oh yeah, but you can both work, you can both make money, you don't have to be the one making 50 grand on your own. It's like, what the fuck are you smoking, people? Right, I mean, I know that is driving to like mothers, being everybody goes to work, fuck the kids, they can go to the daycare. Well, I don't believe that, okay? I'm old-fashioned. I think that one of the parents should really pay their time to spend with the kids. Having a part-time job is probably good fun, obviously, whether it's a wife or a husband, having a part-time job they can do either from home, like, I don't know, back in 70s it was something like knitting or something like this, I can imagine myself sitting there like making socks. I might actually have fun doing that. But obviously you can imagine me like, with my nearly 2 meter tall, 140 kilograms of sitting making kid socks. I can imagine myself doing this, right? It's just brilliant idea. I love it. It's like I'm probably gonna have. My mother used to run like small fashion in same fashion company, and she did knitting with the machines and so on and stuff. And there's me like, but I will probably learn to knit with these long things and just like just sitting there with like a little beard and electric pipe because we can't smoke proper tobacco anymore. So I'll buy myself an electric pipe. I'll grow a beard, buy a pair of glasses, and just sitting there knitting with a pair of these, like stay at home father and reading books to my kids. I'm probably not gonna start from Harry Potter though. I'd probably start from Strugatsky Brothers or like I don't know, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit. Start from Hobbit, then go to Strugatsky Brothers. I don't know, Ian Banks maybe, a bit of science fiction. What else? No, definitely Terry Pratchett, definitely Terry Pratchett. But still, like to get like a reasonable lifestyle. Obviously, you still have to go and so after you paid for your flat, after you pay your taxes, 20 grand, then after you paid for your flat, for the bills, for the council tax, you basically left with about, you're lucky if you got about 12 grand left for 3 people. So obviously if one of the people staying at home, okay, great, you could probably get away with cheaper food bill because somebody, you can cook at home, so you can go but you still like, it's if you're not gonna be going and buying the best food ever. You kind of still gonna have to cut a few corners because you still have to go buy clothes and stuff like this. And fair enough, grown-ups, we can probably take this shit. We can have a 3-year-old T-shirt. Maybe 5-year-old T-shirt. It'll be again. Stretched one. Stretched T-shirt, a beard, electric pipe, glasses, and knitting. With a book. I can read in the book to the kids, right? But obviously, the kids, they need the clothes all the time. They need the clothes. You need to save up some money for the school and stuff like that. So you need to buy clothes to kids. But those who have kids will probably say that, well, if you buy for them to grow, then at least once a year you have to get them a set of clothes. That's a few £100 of the bank, that you have to have saved up. God forbid they go to school. Fuck's sake. I'm not looking forward to that one. The uniform and the books and what else, all the things. Obviously, you still have to look after some stuff in your flat. So, things break, you have to have money saved up for that. And you do the calculations and you think about it and you go like, well, right now in UK, that is the basic wage people need to have, the basic income the family needs to have a family. And many people who come here, they start to do this math, and this is where the chickens come to roost, because for a very long time there was this drive to make the labor cheap to improve the economy. Well, the labor has gotten cheap, but unfortunately they didn't make the economy any better, because obviously once people end up being the cheap labor, they don't have the money to spend. They don't have the money to drive the economy. And say the minimum you need at this point of time as a person, the minimum I'd need would be 50 grand a year. And I'm not speaking about like, super cool family. No, I'm talking about just a normal family life. Just the way it would have been in 1980s, 1970s, mother or father working, one parent staying at home, looking after the kids, sending the kids off to school maybe in a few years, doing all the normal things, just the normal stuff. No, because obviously, yeah, somebody would say, oh yes, but you give your kid into daycare. Daycare? And what, 400 quid a month? Between, so two people go to work, both of you make like, okay, let's say both of you make 30 grand, yeah, you make 60 grand, but the money is being then eaten up by sending kids to daycare. Seriously? Is this what you would want? I mean, let's say, I'm just as a person would not want to have my kids sent to the daycare, at least the daycare, unless the daycare is within like, 2-block walk from my job. I would prefer to trust my wife, or I'd prefer my wife to trust me to look after the kids then. Okay, I've lived in Soviet Union. I remember people like having 2 jobs, obviously, and then the kids going to the kindergarten. I mean, it's a good laugh. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been in the kindergarten, I fucking hated that. But it was a good laugh. I hated it, I do admit that, but I hated like when you have to go in line and then you have to hold each other's hands when you walk in. It was horrible. But we had a few laughs about it, a few fights as well with the kids, just the normal stuff. I remember bits of it. I also remember running away from it, where my parents would leave me at the entry, and just as soon as they leave, I just turn around and fuck off for a day. I was about age of 4 or 5, so I was not exactly fond of the whole thing, and I'd much rather have my kids, being able to play in the playground with the other kids while they're staying near their parents. I mean, again, looking at this, looking at these levels of life, I was talking to somebody and just unfortunately recently didn't get the job in the company in Germany. Didn't get it because the skill set was slightly different from what was mine. And here's what it comes to it. You got Brexit. It's like, we still have all the shit that's been happening before Brexit still happening. And then I talked to this company in Germany. I'm looking at their website, and what this company has done is they have opened up a daycare unit, kindergarten, in their office building. Brilliant. If British companies start doing shit like this, I might actually consider staying. I might. It's a good one, It's like they had a kindergarten unit in their office building. So it's like, I don't think it was just one company in that office, but they all got together. They hired obviously in Germany, many youngsters, they have to go for this national service, but you don't go to national service as in the military. You go to the national service and you end up being like a kindergarten nurse, or like, you look after older people, There's a lot of stuff like this they have to do. So they can choose to do. They can become a hospital nurse or a kindergarten nurse or something like this, which is like, say it's part of their national service kind of curriculum. You don't have to be a soldier. You can be anyone. So it's both men and women. And they went in there and they got they got an older nurse and they got a few youngsters to come over there, look after the kids, and people come in, they can come in to work and obviously leave their kids, and it's right in the building, so they can come down, play with the kids and stuff like this. I thought it was a brilliant idea, still slightly flexed that I didn't get that job, because I thought it was brilliant. But obviously looking at this, for many youngsters that are looking at this, they're looking to come to England, and they do this calculation, and you find that many are moving out because of this. Okay, they get the jobs somewhere where they get even paid less than they would get paid in England. But because the cost of living there much cheaper, they can afford to keep a family on one wage. You can't do this in England. And this drives away the people that will come in here before. Because before here, they used to come here and they say, okay, we come here for 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 maybe, we work hard, we save the money because the pound was more expensive, so they were saving money. And then we go back home with the skills and stuff like this, and then the next ones come in. They've got some skills, you know, they had some experience back home while learning from the people that were here before. You know, it was kind of another, and they're coming here, getting the experience, saving the money, coming home, buying a house, you know. Now this cycle has broken down. So probably one more good thing is that's coming out of it, but it's going to be a long time coming, is that the companies are starting to have to invest into people now, again. Because obviously beforehand they had this access to this reasonably cheap, reasonably well prepared force. They people who had some experience in like somewhere in Poland, in Czech Republic, in Romania or something like this. They'd have some experience in the tech job, and then they'd come here and they got some experience there. They come here, they obviously work for a lot cheaper, but then they move out, but obviously somebody else comes in. The companies could just keep on bringing in what they said, the new talent, you know. And now they can't do this because people are not coming over, which is, so the companies will start having to invest into people. I'm just looking forward to how it's going to work out, because obviously, again, I have noticed that the wages started to go up, but it's just, you know, still too little. We still have the issues with the housing market, and the government still have not even started sorting them out, you know. We have seen that how the last few governments, you know, driving down all the regulations and stuff like this, you know, registered, and obviously the tragedy in London with the big house fire, building fire, but it didn't happen overnight. It happened over, you know, few dozen years, you know. It's systematical failure which have been building up and building up and building up and building up. And the problem is that even with the Brexit, you know, the vote in the election where the Labour almost got there, you know, we can see that people starting to notice that even though that the people voted for Brexit, the systematic failures are still there, and I don't think the government is there to fix them. And because the government is not there to fix them, it does not have the credit of trust to run for the, you know, Brexit. Bloody hell, I've been talking for nearly an hour and we haven't even got to the power of Brexit. Bloody hell, you know. See, these subjects, they take a while, you know. You can't just, you know, talk about it for like any limited amount of time, because they're just so big, you know. So is the Brexit hard, or has it gone softer? Well, one thing we've noticed is, despite the fact that people are saying, look, let's just fucking get on with it, because obviously we can't hang in the middle of nowhere, we have found that the British government has lost it. They completely lost it, because they were very good at talking crap, but when the push came to the shove, they did not have what it takes, you know. And this is why they lost the election. I don't think they even wanted to win the election, because they knew how toxic this Brexit is going to be. And the point of it is like the Brexit, everybody wants to say, like anybody, whether they come from in the government, whether they are in opposition, many of them would like to say that, look, we fucked up. The Brexit is not the best option. But after everybody talking, I think, you know, probably the Lib Dems are probably going to go like, if somebody says there's a Lib Dems can go like, yes, we told you so, you know, the Lib Dems going crazy, and then everybody goes like, who the fuck are you, piss off. You know, we're glad that you said so, but you're still a bunch of, you know, not good for nothing, but whatever. And then obviously the Lib Dems will probably, but anybody else, anybody who wants to have any political future, they understand that moving forwards with the Brexit is toxic. But saying that they will not move forward for the Brexit, especially after, you know, everybody talking about this cool Brexit and how it's going to be great, it's a suicide. it's a you know, if the Conservatives going to say, look, we're not moving forward with the Brexit because it's toxic, you know, and we have been fucking up for the last 30 odd years both Conservatives and the Labour put together, they are signing themselves a death warrants, About 80% of people in the parliament probably will never go there again, and none of them wants to do this. The Labour don't want to do this. Well, Jeremy Corbyn might want to do this, because for him, it actually wins the elections. Surprise, surprise, Okay. Sorry guys. My phone decided to go into standby mode for some reason. But yeah, for Jeremy Corbyn, it's probably one of the best things he can say now. It's like, look, the Brexit is toxic. We have to change the tune. But he doesn't want to say this. Sorry, my phone is playing up. Okay, Jeremy, as I was talking about the Brexit and who wins from telling the Brexit is actually now good. Jeremy Corbyn is probably the only one who can gain from saying that the Brexit is toxic, because he's been very quiet on the Brexit subject. I don't know whether because he wasn't sure whether it's good or bad, and also the fact that he, for a very long time, he actually was a very adamant Brexiteer, at least all the way through the 90s. And then obviously 2000s and stuff like this, things started to change. Europe becomes more socialist, at least more socialist than England is, more socialist than even the old Labour, the Tony Blair Labour was. So he might actually gain a lot by saying that Brexit is bullshit. But even then, it's been such a talk up to the Brexit that simply saying, look, we want to stay, for many people in the British establishment, turning around and saying to the Europeans, look guys, we fucked up, is not something they can do, not something they can do lightly. I think the people who could as well do this and gain a lot of credit for doing so could be the royals. I think the royal family in many cases has been far too quiet on many very important issues, and just saying, look, we fucked up somewhere, this Brexit thing is probably not a good idea, what should we do about it, right? And what should they do about it is, they should admit that Brexit is bad, but what then they should do after this is get a bunch of people. So get the two of the princes. So not the old one, not the one that looks like skinned down Shrek. Not Prince Charles, but his sons. Get his sons. Get a few journalists and people who do analysis and analysts, but like newspaper analysts. So people like this, people who are not part of the political elite. And then get them to go around the country over the next year. So while the British government talks about Brexit, get them to go around and talk to people and walk out their issues. So don't be like, oh yeah, we just don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear about knife crime. We don't want to hear about Muslim gangs, plying kids with drugs and then abusing them, We don't no. Hear all of this, right? And see what the best ways, see if you can walk out something which allows people to deal with. Also hear to people grievances about obviously the big corporations abusing the cheap labor, Hear the people grievances when you kind of go to look for a job. Let's say recently I just thought, okay, it's summer, get myself some weekend role somewhere on the bar or something like this, and just somewhere which I'm not gonna be too tied up. Get out of home, get a bit of extra money while doing my interviews and stuff like this, something which is not too tiring. And I went to the few places and I said, look guys, obviously if I'm gonna work for you, I want to be paid properly. So through the books. And as soon as you say that you want to be paid through the books, they just go just leave us your CV and we might come back to you, right? So again, the big companies, big corporations abusing that situation as well, where there's in the places where you can't survive on the minimum wage, people just still getting paid nothing, 0-hour contracts and stuff like this. Listen to all the grievances, talk to the people, and see what they might have, what would be the best solutions. Get this together, have this run through. Why is this a good idea? Run it as what are the conditions under which we would like to stay part of the European Union. Because because of what I'm seeing is the politicians kind of going up like in the next year and a half, and then they would just say to us, you know what, no, let's just stay, nothing changes. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't like this idea. I really don't, I'm really on the side of Brexiteers that shit needs to change. Part of it needs to be changed within the British government, yes, but there are a lot of things we could say to European Union. Look guys, these are the issues and these how they could be changed. Right, because and then obviously we need to work out what needs to change in European Union to make us believe that we want to stay part of the European Union. I mean, look, it's fine to say that, look, like Nigel Farage, which got elected himself into European Parliament, and has not spent a single day in European Parliament defending British interests. What a great fucking British politician he is, right? He done a lot of good to protect England from that parliaments and from those bastards in Brussels, Do we need someone like this? I don't think so. He talks well, he seems to be a reasonable radio presenter. Let's just keep him to the fucking radio, shall we? We need to work out the conditions under which we want to stay as part of the European Union. Because let's be honest, right? If we go through this, if we work those out, what we will find is that those conditions, especially if we make them part of the public discussion, not just in UK, but in Europe, once we work them out in the next 8 months, and we make them part of the discussion, public discussion in Europe as well as in UK, I'm 100% sure that many Europeans will actually tell to their governments, look, what those guys are saying is making sense, because a lot of countries in Europe, maybe to not such an extent as in UK, but they quite often facing similar issues. Okay? They do face similar issues, and those issues, they resonate with quite a huge group of people. Why do you think the Marine Le Pen, of all people, have gone into the second stage of elections in France? I mean, come on, France is a very liberal country. France is considered to be, look, it's the bastion of left thinking. And yet you see the Marine Le Pen getting into the second part of the election as a very big fuck you to the establishment. The other guy that wins the election is even bigger fuck you to the establishment. Right, so we see that the issues that are happening in Europe and for UK people as well. So I would be looking forward if the royal family just said, look guys, you know what? We need to walk out the way and we're going to take part in that. And it's not going to be a political thing. It's going to be a public thing. Keep all the politicians away from this. Anybody tries to barge on something long like this, whether they're a local politician or non-local politician, national politician, they should be stayed away. I'd be looking forward to this review. People going around UK, talking to people, there's so many electorate places, from villages to cities, there's, 500 of them, so one a day for the next 500 days, 1, 2, 3, make it a day off and there's, 500 days to cover them all. Right. talk to people, give them time, work out the issues. Go to every electorate area and speak to the people there. I'm sure there's been lots and lots of people who come there just for the sake of seeing the royals. They're just going to come there and say, wow, we've seen the royals. But you will also get lots of people talking to you. Talk to the people, have the panels there, discuss it with them, discuss their issues, see if you have any solutions to offer. And that's what I think should be done. And then they have to walk out. And then they have to offer the government a way of getting out of this Brexit with, the Britain to get out of the Brexit. Surprisingly enough, Britain getting out of the Brexit to come back to Europe, but with people's heads held high, with providing solutions, with being the leader of Europe, rather than being just a back alley water trade deal somewhere in the cabinets of Brussels. Fuck Brussels. People here can come up with the solutions. They can give the answers if people dare to talk to them. If we don't get this approach, which like the do-gooder left have, which is like, if you saying something we don't like, you just an extremist. That helps a lot. The Brexit has brought out, again, quite a few extremists out now, and many of those extremists that are coming out now are actually part of the, what's they called, millennial generation. The people that coming out and starting to be more aggressive, the millennials, which is supposed to be pro-Europe. But we're going to talk about millennials a bit later. I don't remember which order I put them in there, but it should be somewhere there. Because again, talking about millennials is a very big subject, which kind of covers quite a few things. But I'll say I'll stop in for now, because I've been talking for more than an hour now. And I say people don't come in, they don't ask questions, but it's still my opinions, and I hope people listen to them. And if they agree with me, again, right, guys, if you agree with me, please say, look, you made sense saying this. If you disagree with me, please also, because people still review those videos, even if it's not many. Guys, if you saw this video and you said, look, I disagree with something, this could be done better, please write it in the comments, because then I can at least, see where it goes and what I can talk about, and maybe cover these subjects or answer your questions, because some questions could warrant a whole new program, And as I say, I don't do this for the money. I do this because I want to talk. Just remembering a song by Russian rock band, Soviet rock band actually, Time Machine, and there was this song where they were singing about this, how whoever's got pretty much nothing to say, or like lots of rubbish to say, they're all so very loud, but somebody who's got some sense to make and who can say things they can say, they always stay quiet. They've always been told, they stay quiet because they're worried, or they've been told to shut up. Well, guys, I do say things which I hope make sense to you, and I want to stay quiet. Okay, I don't want to be another guy who says, yes, I know how it should be done, but I'm never going to tell anyone. No, I'll try to kind of go through, say, with me this at least year, maybe two, the message is, look, let's just balance out the economy so that people, that when they come to England, they don't come here for the money, they come here for the culture and being part of England, and where they come to British farms to work, not just because they want to make a bit of extra buck, but because they want to come here and actually work with British people and, learn from them. Obviously not much you can learn at the farm, unless you speak to English people there. If you just go to the farm and you spend all your time speaking to people from your country, probably no. You can pick strawberries in any country, and it's pretty much the same. You just bend down, pick them up, put them in a fucking box. But if you come there and you walk shoulder by shoulder with Brits, and you learn probably things, have a game of football, I don't know what else. But it's different. And my general idea for the next few years, we need to balance that system out. At least in Europe, it would be better if we could start forcing bigger companies, finish that collusion of governments and bigger companies of trying to drive the workforce cost down. No, we should get our government to force the big companies to drive the cost of the workforce up. Okay, the CEOs and CTOs of the especially big companies, they can sacrifice 10% of their profits. Was it they make a year like one board would make like £1 billion a year, between the 20 of them. Well, I'm sure they can sacrifice 100 mil to improve their living standards of their employees all around the fucking world. But I say that's overall kind of covering this, but obviously just pushing this obviously without looking at other situations in our life, it's going to be boring and it's not going to be conducive to the success of this conversation. So but please people, if you have the questions, if you want to talk about something, if you think I went somewhere wrong and you'd like to get me straight, and you'd like me to kind of change something, or you think like, look, you done wrong here, so like why don't you research here, and then I will look into this. I say I'm not doing this for money. As a matter of fact, doing talks like this on Facebook on the open, where people can actually find them and look them up and listen to them and might not actually like them, might actually decrease my chances in other areas. But I'm still doing this because, like I said, what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to achieve is slightly more than just kind of saying, look, I want to be popular, I want to make money blogging. I never even looked into monetizing my blogs in one way or the other, except maybe advertising, my friend's sword making business. Not sure he's going to be paying me, not expecting any biz from that anytime soon. But anyway, guys, I'm finishing for today. I'm hoping you're going to give me your feedback, and you guys have a good week. I'll try to come out next week. I'll see how my things are going. I'll know it in a couple of days. If I do come out do make a vlog next week, I'll obviously put a notice on mine. I will try to put all those videos on YouTube as well, and I'll be looking at a few other things, but just at this point of time I am mostly looking for a job, so this means that I'm kind of more engaged on that side of things, so having to learn some new skills, install some new systems and stuff like this. So have a good week. I will update my status on Facebook. I will look into a few more things, and you have a good one. Hopefully wherever you are, you have got good weather. Not like we've got in England where there's almost no sunshine, but I hope we're going to get some good weather this week as well. It seems like to be getting better, so I hope we're going to be getting some good weather wherever I go. And I hope you guys are having a good summer, and I hope that things are going to get better for all of us. Although I don't think they will, but I hope. Have a good one. Bye.